So since I always post my videos first thing in the morning, I know a lot of my subscribers like to enjoy them with a morning cup of coffee. And I've even seen the name The Cobwebs Coffee Club pop up in the comments before. Well, on this brisk September morning, while I talk to you about my recommendations for autumnal movies to watch this fall, I thought I'd make a cup and join you. First of all, welcome to the Cobwebs channel, everyone. My name is Daniel, and also welcome to my cabin in the woods. Yeah, I moved my set out here. I just thought it kind of fit the video, and well, it's not really my cabin. I guess I technically found it. I assume it's deserted. Hope the owners don't come back. So fall is my favorite season, and for today's topic, we're looking for movies with that fall vibe. I'm talking about red and orange in the trees, leaves blowing in the wind, coats and sweaters, and usually some spookiness. We're gonna let that brew for a bit. And also, I'm doing my best to avoid Halloween movies. That'll be a list that'll come next month. For today, we're just talking about fall movies. Mostly horror, but I got a few curveballs in there as well from some other genres. Now, I didn't rank these movies, but I did break them up into categories. So first of all, let's talk about two movies that take place in the fall in small town America. And this is Something Wicked This Way Comes from 1983. First of all, it was October, a rare month for boys. Not that all months aren't rare, but there be bad and good, as the pirates say. Take September. Okay, I'm at this point, I'm just reading Ray Bradbury's book. Let's go ahead and pause that. Let's talk about this movie. So, Something Wicked This Way Comes is actually a Disney movie. It's about a couple of young boys that live in a very small town in Illinois, I believe it is, in 1950s America. Kind of a childhood classic for a lot of people. It's a Disney movie, and it's maybe got like the greatest first half hour of any movie I've ever seen. Wow, just the nostalgia of childhood wonder is just off the charts in this movie, and the fall atmosphere is incredible. I mean, it just opens up with beautiful shots of fields and this small town, but while the look of this town is so idyllic, so nostalgic, it was actually filmed in Vermont. This isn't a movie that really shies away from some of the darkness that can be in small towns, because this carnival that rides in, the autumn people.
You are the autumn people. Where do you come from? The dust. Where do you go to? The grave.
But what they really do is they prey on the fears, the insecurities, and perhaps most importantly, the regrets of the people in this town to take advantage of them.
We suck that misery and find it sweet.
Now, the main young boy in this has a dad who's played by Jason Robards, and Jason Robards is probably one of my favorite character actors of all time. I just absolutely love him. And his thing is that he's an unusually old man to be the father of a child, and he's very self-conscious about that. And he's undoubtedly the heart of the movie. Like, he's just a character you feel for so much. And I just love that this is such a nostalgic movie that also deals with old age regret. I don't think everything about how all the horror in this was executed is perfect. This is not a perfect movie. Actually, the director for this movie was fired off of it, and there is still a director's cut. Apparently, there's one VHS that still has that director's cut. I would love if it got restored one day, but it's Disney. That's a pipe dream. It's not perfect, but the nostalgia, the atmosphere, the ideas that come from Ray Bradbury's book are perfect for this time of year. Next up, let's talk about a new discovery for me. I just saw this for the first time. This is Stephen King's Needful Things from 1993. Now, Stephen King is just one of the things that I most associate with fall. A lot of times when I want to feel those fall vibes, I'll put on a Stephen King movie, one that takes place in a small New England town, probably in Maine. And Needful Things really, really fits that. By the way, this is my Kino Lorber 4K, which is pretty cool. It looks great on 4K, but that cover, it's not quite autumnal. Let's slip that off. Oh yeah, that's better. That's just kind of got those warm fall colors. Let's go ahead and keep this out. So Needful Things takes place in the fall in a small town called Castle Rock, Maine, where a mysterious antique dealer comes into town to set up a new store. Now, our main characters are Ed Harris as the sheriff and Bonnie Bedelia as the diner owner. They get engaged at the beginning of this movie, but this antique dealer is played by Max von Sydow. And basically the idea of the film is he is the devil, and he is there to tear this town apart using the evil that's already in people's hearts. So what he does is he has everything that people truly want in this antique store, and he will give it to them individually as long as they do a favor for him. And all of these favors are like small to kind of live large acts of unkindness to their neighbors, done in secret. And it's also meticulously planned so that all of these small acts go together like domino effects to just tear people apart, make them hate each other. And it basically goes to like an apocalyptic place by the end of this movie, which is awesome. Now, I really enjoyed this movie. The atmosphere is fantastic. There is nary a shot outside in this movie where there aren't leaves blowing down the streets. Like, the fall atmosphere is perfect. There's also a lot of the movie that takes place at a farm, a turkey farm, and those farmhouse vibes are really perfect for fall as well. But I think it's the performances that I love the most in this movie. I mean, Ed Harris is just such a capable and standby actor who can pretty much do anything. He's given like a slightly different kind of performance in this, a little bit more low class and passionate than, I feel like he plays like strong military men a lot of the times. Not always, of course, but he's really, really good in this, as is Bonnie Bedelia. Man, Max von Sydow, awesome in this movie.
There's nothing quite so invigorating as a crisp fall day in New England. Don't you agree?
He's a perfect devil. He's so charming, and you completely understand anybody being totally taken in by him. He's just so disarming to anyone who walks in the door. A devil that very easily draws you in, but brings the creepiness when he needs to. I mean, Max von Sydow, one of the greatest actors of all time. For our next category, let's talk about the woods. I absolutely love the woods in the fall. I love to take hikes. I love to be in the woods. Something about it just rejuvenates me. All the trees, the noises of nature, it's perfect. And for a movie that has great fall atmosphere out in the woods, I want to talk to you about Gretel and Hansel from 2020. So Gretel and Hansel is the classic fairy tale with a few twists up its sleeve. It follows Gretel and Hansel as they have to leave their mother's house because of extreme poverty and try to find somewhere else to live. By the way, yeah, my coffee's ready, so I'm just getting ready to pour it. But let's keep talking about Gretel and Hansel while I do that. But they come across a witch's cottage in the woods. That's a damn fine cup of coffee. So Gretel and Hansel is directed by Oz Perkins, who just directed Longlegs, probably the biggest horror hit of the year. Sophia Lillis plays Gretel. You probably saw her in the recent It movie. She was great in that. She also played Nancy Drew recently, and she was fantastic in that. And this is a movie that very much focuses on Gretel, and even focuses on her emerging witchy powers that are coming up. And that's why she especially gets drawn in by this witch, because she begins teaching her things. The witch is played by Alice Krige, which is perfect casting. I mean, Alice Krige, a little bit of a horror icon for movies like Sleepwalkers and A Ghost Story, but she's probably the most well known for playing the Borg Queen in Star Trek First Contact. And this movie is one of the most like authentically witchy movies that I've ever seen. I mean, there's even a scene where Hansel goes out into the woods and he finds a pentagram carved on a tree. He looks out through the fog and he sees the figure of a witch, complete with pointy hat. You've even got pointy hat look in this, which is perfect. I just absolutely love that. It's even got small witchy things like communicating with plants. This movie has such a yellow and gold tint to it, which is perfect for autumn. It's just the color palette you want. The ground is always covered with leaves. The trees are either filled with beautiful, colorful fall leaves, or depending on the mood of the scene, they might be barren trees. And I really like that, how Oz Perkins uses the autumn season to affect the mood of the scene, judging by how many beautiful leaves are in the trees or whether they're just jagged, creepy wooden branches. I really think for the autumn season, a creepy fairy tale out in the woods, finding a witch's cottage during the fall is absolutely perfect. Okay, we've talked about a lot of horror. Let's go ahead and switch things up and talk about Hoosiers from 1986. So Hoosiers is a basketball drama about a disgraced college basketball coach played by Gene Hackman who moves out to a tiny small town in Indiana in the 1950s to coach their high school basketball team. In terms of the prestige of the job, it's a huge downgrade, but he is absolutely determined to make this work and do the best he can. Now, this movie takes place in the kind of town that is obsessed with their high school sports team. It's really like all the excitement and entertainment they have. And because of that, it's a very high pressure job, and they are on him, and they will take any opportunity to get rid of him. And that's what's satisfying about this movie, because I'm not a sports guy. I know, you're shocked, right? Absolutely shocking. But this movie, it's about sports. But, like, there isn't much emphasis on, like, any particular game. There's, like, no emphasis at all on the mechanics of basketball, how it works, the strategy, anything like that. This is a character drama, and it's about a man who is kind of broken, but wants to build himself back up. And it's super satisfying. It's a really good movie. Gene Hackman is fantastic in this. I actually heard that Gene Hackman said that he was kind of phoning it in with this movie. That just shows you what a legend Gene Hackman is. Like, he phones it in, and he still does a better job than almost anyone else could do. But quietly, off to the side, this movie has, like, two of my favorite supporting performances I've seen in a long time. You've got Dennis Hopper as the town bum, the town drunk, who's, like, the most obsessed with basketball as anyone. Probably the most satisfying human story out of this whole movie. And Barbara Hershey as a fellow teacher and acting principal here, who's, like, kind of opposing him, but kind of gets drawn in by him and wants to help him succeed. Everything in this movie feels so authentic, especially the town. Okay, the fall vibes in this movie are off the charts. Absolutely immaculate. I mean, this is the perfect 1950s tiny little small town atmosphere you want, and everywhere you look, changing leaves blowing across the streets, a chill in the air with people wearing sweaters and coats. It is everything you want out of the fall aesthetic. It's just missing, like, you know, witches and the devil, but we just talked about a couple of movies that have those. By the way, I didn't even mention what category that was. That is back to school, because a back to school is a big deal for fall, right?
Makes me want to buy school supplies.
Fall just makes you just want a bouquet of sharpened pencils.
I would send you a bouquet of newly sharpened pencils.
But let's talk about another back to school movie, and that is Cry Wolf from 2005. So this movie is about a young man who transfers to a boarding school, and he quickly gets sucked into the popular crowd, a crowd who likes to play head games with each other. They like to play these games where they lie to each other and they try to figure out who is the culprit of some kind of fantasy game, blah, blah, blah. But it soon starts to become not enough, and they create an imaginary serial killer and post things about him on the internet and try to get the whole school involved in being scared of this killer. But it might just be that someone has taken inspiration from this killer. So I heard for years that this movie was terrible, just typical 2000s teen trash. But this is actually a DVD cover that really scared me when I was a kid. I don't have this movie on DVD. It's still not on Blu-ray in the States as far as I can tell. Like, Scream Factory released this thing on 4K. But I thought this cover was so scary. But it's so funny that when I finally watched this movie has become like a cozy comfort movie for me. Because it really has. It's not scary at all, but it's a really cozy little film. I really like teen horror. Teen horror is something that I hope never goes away. Like classy A24 kind of horror. That's great, but like, give us the trashy teen stuff too. I really think that's important for the genre. It has ever since the 1980s, possibly even before. The atmosphere of this movie is so great. This is another one that has such a golden orange tint to it. The grass is always bright yellow. The leaves are always changing. There's always tons of dead leaves all over the ground. And another atmosphere that people tend to really like for fall is dark academia. And this movie very much has that as well. That sort of dark boarding school kind of a look that a lot of people like from Tim Burton's Wednesday. This movie kind of has that as well, although a little bit more orange to it. Even the killer has an orange mask, which just further fits the fall vibes. And this movie's just got to cast a bunch of like CW type 2000s people. Like Jared Padalecki's in this. He was such a staple of 2000s teen horror, wasn't he? But my favorite performance in this movie is from Lindy Booth. She plays the young woman named Dodger, who's basically the ringleader for this crowd, kind of controls everything. And she's the perfect dream girl for our main character transfer student, who's just always elusive, hard to get. I think Lindy Booth is fantastic in this movie. Like, a better performance than this kind of movie really deserves.
It's like you're playing checkers. And I'm playing chess.
And by the way, speaking of fall movies with Lindy Booth, she also starred in Hallmark's Under the Autumn Moon, which is actually not that bad. On this harvest moon. Our next category is camp. And camp, summer camp, typically associated with the summer, obviously. But here's a couple of fall camp movies. This first one is called Indian Summer, and it's from 1993. Now, this movie is about a camp that a lot of adults are very nostalgic about, and a bunch of them are invited by the camp owner to come spend a week at this camp as a nostalgic experience, because this camp owner wants to spend one last week with his favorite class of campers before he shuts the camp down. Now, the first thing you gotta say about this movie is it has a phenomenal cast. This movie has Alan Arkin as the camp director, but as the campers now turned adults, you've got Bill Paxton, Diane Lane, Matt Craven, no relation to Wes Craven, Elizabeth Perkins, Kevin Pollak, Kimberly Williams Paisley, and Sam Raimi. Yes, Sam Raimi is just an actor in this movie who plays like the weird, awkward handyman of the camp, and basically he's there to deliver some Three Stooges type physical comedy at certain points in the movie, and he always does a great job of it. The cast is awesome, and this really is just like a slice of life, nice movie about people coming to this camp, reliving their childhood memories, and having some really satisfying character arcs as they go, becoming better people, or at least different people over the course of this week. But why is this a fall movie? So this movie takes place after the summer camp season, obviously, for just one last week. So it's in the fall. Indian summer is another word for fall, and this movie really just has that atmosphere. Pretty much the entire movie takes place outside. I love nature-based movies like this, and it's just beautiful scenery everywhere you look. Like there's a lake right there, changing leaves. Great movie. For another camp movie, we've got a camp slasher film from the 80s called Madman. Now, Madman is about campers who are at a summer camp, and they tell a campfire story about Madman Mars, a crazy axe-wielding murderer who lurks out in these woods. And when you know it, he does come out of the woods, he finds them and starts picking them off one by one. So I honestly don't understand why this is a fall movie, because it is supposed to be a summer camp kind of thing, but it must be just like the longest camp ever, because it's clearly fall in this movie. I mean, this looks like an October film through and through. You got dead leaves, jagged trees. Everybody is wearing heavy coats and sweaters. The camp is made up of these wood cabins, and you've got piles of chopped wood over here. I have it on this Vinegar Syndrome 4K release, and a lot of the movie takes place at night, but man, on 4K, everything is crystal clear. So it really delivers that atmosphere perfectly, even in the dark, which a lot of other movies don't. I really enjoy 80s slashers, and I think this is a particularly good one because the characters are actually quite likable. They're very nice people, which is kind of a welcome change from slashers. You don't get a bunch of D-bags who you want to see killed off. These are pretty nice people. And the kills are fantastic. Like, they're very creative. You can really feel the filmmakers just trying to do something different, something original every single time, which a lot of 80s slashers do not do, so I really appreciate that. My next category is leaves. Now, we've been talking a lot about fall leaves in this video, how can you not? But here's a movie that I think encapsulates fall leaves better than any other movie on this list. This is another movie I just saw for the first time, and it's called The Odd Life of Timothy Green from 2012. Now, this is a heartwarming family drama, but it actually starts out very sad. It's about Joel Edgerton and Jennifer Gardner. Jennifer Gardner just playing a mom in so many movies. Like, shout out the Jennifer Gardner Mom Cinematic Universe. They're a couple that really wants to be parents so bad. There's nothing they want more in their life than to have a kid, and they just can't. It's just not happening for them. And one night they decide to give up, to leave that dream behind. But as one last hurrah, they open a bottle of wine, sit down, and take out a bunch of paper and write down all of the aspects that they would like in a kid that they may have. And then they bury the box of those papers in the backyard as, this is it. Like, we're accepting our lives as it is. We're not going to have this. But out of that box, buried in the garden, grows an actual kid who digs himself out of the dirt. It's like a zombie sort of a thing. And now they have a kid. And it's really weird. It's such a strange premise for a movie. Like, it sounds like a horror movie, right? It absolutely does. But it is a very heartwarming family drama, and it's about them kind of learning about this kid, learning how to be parents. But as far as leaves, this kid actually does have leaves growing out of his legs, Again, very weird, but he's technically like a plant. Like, he grew out of the garden. And the fall atmosphere in this movie, like, they went hard. Like, I would say the only other fall movie I can think of that went harder than this on beautiful colored leaves is Alfred Hitchcock's The Trouble with Harry, which I recommended in my last fall video, and that's still my top fall movie recommendation. Check out The Trouble with Harry. But yeah, the colors are just off the charts, gorgeous in this movie. There is even a fort that this kid and his friend made out in the woods, out of fall leaves. They literally just like built things out of attaching leaves together. What can I say? I watch a lot of crazy horror movies, a lot of dark stuff, but I sat on the couch with my wife one evening. We watched this movie on Disney Plus. It's streaming on there. And it was nice. It was heartwarming. It was beautiful. I really enjoyed The Odd Life of Timothy Green. Okay, my next recommendation, well, my next category is the perfect fall. Now, we've had a lot of great fall atmosphere on here, but this is perfection. And it's technically not a movie. It's a very short TV series called Over the Garden Wall that came out in 2014. This is a series of episodes that are about 10 minutes long. So honestly, you can watch the whole thing in I think less than 2 hours. So you can treat it like a movie. But it is a cartoon that originally aired on Cartoon Network. And it's about a couple of young boys traveling in the woods trying to find their way home. And that's about the plot. The older boy is actually voiced by Elijah Wood, which is pretty cool. And the younger boy, voiced by some kid, I don't know by who, but he's so funny. He's just such a hilarious, cute little quirky kid. But on the course of their journey through the woods, they just encounter all of these adventures, all these side characters, and this show encapsulates fall like almost nothing else. The second episode, I believe it's the second episode, is my favorite one. It's one of the greatest things I've like ever seen, and it's about them finding a cult of pumpkin-headed people out in the woods, and they join them for a bit, and it's honestly spooky. There's some genuinely spooky stuff in this show, but like, I mean, come on. A cult of pumpkin-headed people out farming with corn stalks everywhere. Like, it's awesome. Like, it's so good. There's also a segment that, an episode that really stands out to me about them finding this old woman out in the woods, and she has this daughter that she seems to be keeping captive, and it's the spookiest episode. I think the old woman is actually voiced by Tim Curry, if I remember right. Christopher Lloyd does a voice in the show as well. It's actually got a surprisingly good cast, but lots of spookiness, but also lots of beauty. It's very rustic. It's very much taking place out in the past, sort of a I don't know, colonial but nondescript area of the past. It just feels very nostalgic in that way. And the music, the soundtrack is incredible. Not just the instrumental music, but the song. There's a lot of original music. It's almost a little bit of a musical. And I do regularly listen to a lot of the music from this to welcome in the fall season. Over the Garden Wall, it's perfect. And I'm honestly not the biggest animated guy. I don't know if you are, but even if you're not, I would check it out. So that's my list, but what movies do you recommend for the fall? Please let me know down in the comments below. Let's talk about this wonderful season that we all love so much. And yeah, if you enjoyed this, definitely click this video for more of my fall recommendations. Would really appreciate a like and subscribe as well if you enjoyed this. Thank you so much, my friends. Happy September. I'll see you next time.